everybody, I'm Mark. Welcome. Just me and you. A lot to talk about, and probably a lot of the wrong things to talk about, or the people are talking about. We're in the middle of a Rugby World Cup. We should be celebrating that fact. We should be celebrating a lot about the thing, but we just can't. I mean, it's becoming farcical on two fronts. So let's talk about Eben first. You know, in '99, I believe everybody's calling for him. Not everybody. A lot of people. I think there's a force in this, and I hate sounding like any of these other conspiracy theorists, but there seems to be a force hell-bent on destroying anything good in this country. And without, we want a trial by media, Etzebeth in Langebon. It's a well-publicized event now. And he's in Japan, and people are saying he should be coming home. Why on earth should he be coming home?
Exactly, and they're looking at every picture, every still, every whisper to try and prove that there's racism in the Bok team, that it's still a divided team. I was.
You were part of the 2002 Australia debacle.
Yeah, 2002, 2003, when I left 6 weeks before the World Cup because of the division within the camp, because of the racism that existed. And, I wrote yesterday that anyone who wants to judge the Springboks, go back to that era and look at this one. And this is the most unified Springbok team I've ever seen. And it's the most transformed Springbok team I've ever seen, and the most liberated team I've ever seen. And that stems back from, if you look at a guy like Siya Kolisi and Eben, they've been teammates for the best part of 5-6 years at the Stormers. You don't do a con job for 6 years, socially and kind of publicly. And regardless of what may have happened at the incident, let that incident be investigated the proper way through the police, through the Human Rights Commission. I spoke to Mark Alexander, the South African Rugby Union president. They've appointed an independent judge.
I feel sorry for Mark. You've got people there that should be doing a better job. I'm not going to name names, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean he's at a World Cup. His Springboks effectively have qualified for a quarterfinal. They're one of the most popular teams. They played some fantastic footy. Yeah. They've got a smile on their faces. It's kind of in a year of our sport. If you look at where it's gone with our cricketers at the World Cup, as brave as Banyana were, they never made it through. You've got a rugby team there that is delivering on expectation. And as you started the show, you said it should be this feel-good story. But there's still this refusal to actually accept the team has moved on, and South African rugby has moved on. And they've taken on the chin for a long time. When Alexander got in 2016, as he said, they were at the lowest they've ever been. They lost to Italy. There was accusations of incompetence, of everything else, and a lack of performance. And they kind of went through the processes to do the exit strategy with Alistair Couture. And I thought they did it the right way, and they were patient. They bought Rassie, and they got a lot of flack for that. They gave him carte blanche to build a team. They are, again, Rassie spoke about game time for black players, not just numbers. He said he can pick 19 black players and then give them 5 minutes each. And you look at how those black players have been given game time equal to the white players. And I look at that Springbok team now and I don't count the numbers. Whether there's 12 in the 23 or if there's 6 in the 23, you just feel he's picked a good side. And for me, the transformation of the team has been when you can drop black players for black players and leave good black players out, because...
Yeah, and you're not balancing an equation.
Yeah. But what surprised me is that you've got an ethnic black captain, Siya Kolisi, who's there because he's the best in his position. He's playing bloody well. The team's unified behind him as the captain. He knows Eben well. Get him to sit at a press conference and say, whatever transpired or will transpire when we get home, that will take its course. But that's my teammate. We're united as Springboks, as South Africans, and we're really not interested in responding anymore to social media trolls.
No, and the world is full of trolls. And if let's look, it's a double standard. Let's look back in '99, Makai Ntini, who was accused of rape, quite a serious crime.
Convicted of rape and only got off on a technicality.
Okay, but Cricket South Africa did not, or were not under any pressure to take him off the team, or did they take him off the team while he was still going through his processes? I
mean, Ali Bacher was at the time who's heading up Cricket South Africa. I think they were called the United Cricket Board of South Africa then. Was innocent until proven guilty.
Well, that is generally the law for every human being.
And again, the Eben thing is, everyone has an opinion, everyone has a judgment.
Yeah.
They weren't there. And if he's done it, he will suffer the consequences
Yep.
according to that investigation. And if he hasn't done it, what are they then going to say?
Yeah.
Sorry for bringing you home from a World Cup. I think it's the most sane, sensible decision, and it shows how in control they are in terms of that team ethic, that they didn't feel the need to send him home. And as Rassie Erasmus had said at the time, he's a player of mine. The leadership of the team have met with him. They are backing his version of events, yet fully cooperating with any investigation that's taking place. But then you look at, I looked at Damian Willemse scoring his first try against Canada, and the absolute bliss and joy on his face. And Frans Steyn, who 12 years ago was kicking us to a World Cup win as a 19-year-old, Damian Willemse was only 21. I think you could just sense that I've been there before as a 19, 20-year-old in a World Cup and you're 21. And he's hugging him and kissing him. And I tweeted, that's one of my favorite pictures of that Springbok team in the thing. But I didn't see a flood of trolls saying, what's happening here?
Yeah.
It's two different races embracing each other. The Mpimpi thing has been blown out of such proportion.
Mark, it's pathetic.
And then the player himself has to come on and say, we have this system going, it's called the bomb squad, and those 7 players change with each game.
Yeah.
And they've been told to come in and blow this game apart. And when they do, they have their own little celebration.
Well, it reminds me, there was a story that happened in Los Angeles this year. Beyonce and Jay-Z were the guests of the Los Angeles, the Clippers, the owner and his wife. And the woman was leaning over Beyonce speaking to Jay-Z. And all the so-called beehive, I call them trolls and people that don't have a life, then came out and said that how dare she disrespect Beyonce like that. All she was doing was asking, did he want a lime and soda? It's like that blew up into an international story covered by CNN. I mean, we're living in a world where people need to get a life. And I don't mean by becoming keyboard warriors and writing all this shit. Enough is enough, and we need to there's something needs to be done. It really annoys me when we're living in a world that's not the reality. So you've got Eben that may or may not have done something, but we'll find out the truth. People are so quick to condemn, and it really.
And it's as you said, people seem to get this joy out of finding something to condemn, even if it's not there, because, and I've always said this with South Africans, and especially South African sports followers, we don't know how to lose, but we certainly don't know how to win either. It's the celebration just is always muted. There's always got to be something that's not kosher or not cool, and it always comes back to race, and it comes back to cultural division. But having written about the Springboks and worked with them for the past 30 years and been at the forefront of fighting this fight for transformation, which is a daily occurrence, it's not an event, it's the way of life. I have never known a Springbok side and a Springbok setup as this one has been in the last 18 months that finally speaks.
Does SARu have a communications manager?
They've got a big communications team. And I think that's the message.
What are they doing?
Well, that's the message that should be put out at the moment is let those players speak. By way of action, they're showing it as well. The way they play on the field, the ambassadors that they are off the field. But I just find that they're in a bit in a no-win situation as well. The players and Mpimpi releases a social media video to say, hey guys, this has gone way out of control. Yeah. And people are saying to him, no, it hasn't.
As Beyonce had to.
And people say to him, no, you're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
They racially snubbed you. And he says, no, there's a bomb squad kind of subculture here, and I could be in it next week because I could be on the bench. And they say, no, let me tell you, that was racist. And he's like, no, it wasn't. And you're getting this poor bugger that's having to defend something that never happened.
Yeah.
And so it's been madness, and it's been a week of madness with the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, let's get into
no games this weekend. Well, we hope Scotland still get to play on Sunday against Japan.
Well, what word best describes the World Cup? Because one, I never believed it should have ever gone to Japan. That's because there were better options. But the political landscape and the vote, how you go about getting votes, those things. And who you know and what games you play against, future games against the all. It should have never gone to Japan. It should have came to South Africa, but it went to Japan. And with Japan comes typhoons and unpredictability. You've got people that are saving up to go to these events. They were once in a lifetime events. it's not cheap to get to Japan, and it's not cheap to stay in Japan, and it's not cheap to buy a ticket for a game. And it's just become, to me, farcical. Absolute farce. It's a farce that there's no contingency plans. That you've got so many. Besides the poor fans, you've got a Welsh team, and I am Welsh. You got a Welsh team that just played a physical game against Fiji. France, England cancelled 0-0 draw. France get that extra time to prepare for Wales when they should be licking their wounds like Wales are after a tough final game.
It's been very significant in that people say, well, they couldn't have been judged on weather things. They could have, because they knew that at any stage, and especially this typhoon that has hit, it's been coming for 10 days.
Yeah.
So there's been talk in that. So there could have been plans made. And now you're getting all the defenders who are coming out and saying, you can't just move so many teams and the logistics and this. Then they shouldn't have got that.
Then they should have never had it in Japan.
They should never have had the tournament there, because, and I know, having worked on the South African bid, things that were put in place in terms of security measures, terrorism, hotels. If this should happen, if your country should go on strike, what is your contingency plan? We had to have one there. Yeah. Otherwise, we would be marked down. So that was one of the biggest risks, that something would happen that would disrupt the tournament and potentially the flow of the tournament. And this whole euphoria of we're taking it to new areas and everything is glorified about being in Japan, because they're so desperate to grow the game. But they've lost the essence of what this World Cup is. And from here on in, it's just not going to be the same. Whether Japan plays against Scotland or not, but you're going to have a Wales who may say it was an unfair advantage because France was in wait for 2 weeks.
We've got the Italians saying that it's unfair, that they targeted New Zealand. I mean, Italians are infamous for a few things, and one of them is a tank that has 6 gears in reverse and 1 forward, just in case an attack comes from behind. They had no chance of beating New Zealand, yet they're saying they targeted New Zealand. Oh my
but
God.
you've even got, and records are there to be broken, and most teams would say whatever about the records. But I read a piece, New Zealand's World Cup record run ended with draw to Italy. So officially now they have 17 wins and a draw.
Yeah, well, and they're still undefeated. So.
You know, and it's just, again, it's the madness of those kind of results, the 0-0, 2 points each. It should never have got to that, and no match should ever have been called off.
But we're having the wrong conversations.
Exactly, because there's nothing to bet on Saturday.
Well, the thing is, it's been a nightmare for betting because of the humidity. When have you ever watched an All Black team who dropped 2 balls going over the try line? Never seen it. I've never seen them drop 2 balls collectively in the history going over a try line. You've got the humidity, you've got the refereeing, which has been under the microscope, and now you've got typhoons. And I mean, I can't imagine being there now, having to go and see France versus England, which, you're talking 50 to 100,000 rand to go over there with a family or friends or your son or whatever. You're talking serious money to go over there, and then no contingency plan. Sorry, game 0-0. It's not good enough.
Well, I mean, all week World Rugby have been saying we are exploring every contingency.
Yeah.
And then actually there was no contingency.
No.
So
well, it's an easy thing to explore if there's nothing to explore.
Yeah. So I think they failed themselves. They should be embarrassed.
Yeah.
And it really has tainted this World Cup.
Biggest losers out of this typhoon, besides the fans, the team wise, besides the fans who I recognize as the biggest losers, and the potential Rugby World Cup audience. Rugby's a confusing game to begin with. But the administration doesn't need to be confusing. You know, it should have been solutions. No.
I think this desperation to grow the game wasn't counterbalanced with the need to give a world-class product to the audience.
Yeah.
And if they had said games will be cancelled for the first time ever in the World Cup, get your points in early because you could be on the outer.
Well, Eddie Jones, being the proverbial prick that he is, makes the comment to the Scottish. What does he say?
He said you wouldn't have to be in this. You wouldn't have to worry about your last game if you had won your first 3. But I can tell you now, if Eddie Jones was sitting in this position, or Steve Hansen was, they would be playing that game in Hong Kong to make sure that they actually get a contest in terms of integrity and the credibility of the World Cup. That's the nonsense we would have been fed now.
Well, to me, the biggest losers, Mark, Scotland. They would have beaten Japan on Sunday. And this suits Japan. This suits the Japanese team that they're now going to finish top. It's great for South Africa because we're going to play
Japan.
Play Japan.
But you know, Scotland are still hanging on to that sliver of hope that on Sunday morning they'll be told they can play. But also, how does a team prepare?
Hoping that the wind's 80 kilometers an hour instead of 160.
But how does a team prepare mentally when it couldn't be? It's been a mess. It's been a mess in terms of. It should be a week where we should have been celebrating all those who have gone through to the quarterfinals. Be celebrating some great games, and especially in this country, we should be celebrating a Springbok team that so far really has delivered on expectation. And even in their 23-17 defeat to New Zealand, it was a hell of a game. And they were just beaten by a side who, in a matter of 3 minutes, scored 2 magnificent tries. But very little to choose between the two. They went out and did what we thought they would do. They smashed Namibia, they smashed Italy, and they smashed Canada. And they played probably that first 25 minutes against Canada was, forget the nature of the opposition, was just...
Well, after 20 minutes, it was 31-0.
Yeah.
And it was a great display.
So I think that's what we want to be talking about. Unfortunately, we're not. And hopefully next week we can talk about who the quarterfinalists are, and
well, we're not going to. Hopefully, there will be some common sense that prevails this weekend. Though I'm betting against that, but they're not offering any odds on it. We've got a World Cup, still a World Cup. My heart goes out to the fans and spectators who've made that long journey over there. I'm gutted for them, and I hope that the rugby gives them their money back. Gives them all the money back.
I wonder what kind of insurances have been signed off pre this tournament.
Well, that would mean that a contingency plan was needed to be put in place, and I doubt if they have one. So it'll have to be, instead of the profitability, they might have to dig into the profits of this World Cup and pay people out and do the right thing. And
that thing about saying something, and then the commentators curse. He's never missed a kick, and then he yanks one.
Yeah.
So
you'd figure,
the World Rugby CEO, Mr. Gosper, just a few days ago. It was one of the greatest risks to take the World Cup to Japan, but one of our greatest and boldest moves.
Yeah.
He's not saying that today.
No, and with the power of social media, this thing's going to blow up.
Yeah, but
worse than it is now.
Yeah, but this will forever be the World Cup that will be tarnished and be tainted.
Well, in the modern era of World Cups, and I mean from '95, when it was just on the cusp of professionalism. To me, this has been the worst World Cup by a country mile. I haven't enjoyed it. Hopefully it'll pick up, but it's been a big damp squib for me. Pardon the pun. But Mark, thanks for coming in, and hopefully we can talk about something more enjoyable next week, like some games.
Cheers.
Cheers, Mark.